Hey, good morning, y'all. It is Thursday, August 29th, and I am that developer dad. And guess what? I kept going after yesterday afternoon's session, and as you can see here, I am cloud hosted and operational. I can view the NPCs that I've generated. I can create new NPCs. I can generate the AI description, and I can save them, and I can go back to my list, and here's good old Lori and Greenbrier sitting in the database. They have an olive complexion, short and curly black hair, dressed in simple earth-toned robes. Curious and insightful, always eager to learn and help others, and so on. So, cool. Now, I'm almost at the point where I can start demonstrating this application to people in public. There's a few things that aren't super happy yet. Number one, because I'm using the free tier for the Azure database, after a period of inactivity, it'll go offline. Hey, Frightful, how's it going? It goes offline, and then it causes the application to time out as the database wakes back up after taking a nap. And Microsoft does this automatically to save me money. I'm all for that. I only get 100,000 seconds per month of free database activity. And there are more than 100,000 seconds in a month, obviously. So when nothing is actively connecting to and running queries against my database, Microsoft will actually put the database into nap mode or pause it using their language. And it takes it a minute to wake up from its nap. And unfortunately, that causes my query from my applications to time out and throw an error message, and then the app gets into a funny state. So that's one thing that I want to cover, or one thing that I want to handle. I don't know if I'm going to tackle that one today, because it involves bringing in a new library that I'm aware of, but not super familiar with. And there's some other things that I want to start handling that are kind of prerequisites to future features that I want to add. Number one, I need to make sure that the database ID for the character and the database ID for the person that created it are brought down to the user interface level and then sent back after modifications are made. This is so that I can eventually add an edit screen so that you can look at one of these. Let's view one. Where is the app? Here is the app. So you can basically look at one of these characters that the AI has fleshed out some details on and say, you know what, that's a real good start, but I want to add some additional details. There's a few things I want to add to the create screen, like the optional ability for a user to provide the name of the town or where they're at or what have you. And that'll be a big help in organizing where our NPCs are located. Once I've got, their hometown or where they've been encountered or whatever, I'll be able to show that on the detail or on the list screen under the details area. And it'll also be more food for the language model. Excuse me. Other things I want to change. I want to do some cleanup of these screen elements, like get rid of the placeholder text here, fix up the styling, and so on and so forth. These are all things that I would want to do before I go live with this thing and start selling it as a online service. Not to mention, I want to be able to iterate on the prompt I send to the AI. And right now, that prompt exists as a hard-coded string in my application's code base. And that means if I want to change the prompt, I have to redeploy the whole application and let it go through its shutdown and reboot cycle and shake its head and wake back up and all of that stuff. And that's really disruptive if I've got live users. So I need a better way of iterating on these prompts. And I need a better way to be able to change those prompts in real time without impacting the behavior and the responsiveness of the application itself. So these are all things that I want to address. In fact, I haven't even created an issue for the prompt management yet. So, create a way for a system administrator to manage the prompts that can be used between the NPC system and the AI provider. And that is actually something that may turn into a completely different project. We're going to move this to the top. And we're going to edit this. Currently, the AI prompts are stored as hard-coded strings in the code base. While this is fine for initial development, makes it into a major pain in the apple cart to iterate on those prompts. Figure out a way to externalize these and make them more easily modifiable. Save. I'll assign myself to this. The label is going to be coding, architecture, and enhancement. Milestone, future, it's already here, good. I can save everything. Today, I think, before I get into making the application, let's see here. The AI prompt, add an edit button, improve grounding data, NPC ID. This guy needs to go to the top-ish. But I think our first priority, before we can make sure the NPC ID and user ID are available in the UI process, we need to do a little bit of discovery. And we need to see what kind of information we have available to us in the actual application at this point. Because right now it's doing its authentication via the app service. And I don't know if the actual application code has any awareness of who's actually using it. So let's think about that. Or not think about it, but let's actually do some experiments. So I'm going to shrink that guy down. That's not running. GM tool data. Okay, we can shrink that because that's just the Azure stuff. That's my sound control. And we're going to create a new branch. Actually, first, I want to fetch and I want to pull all of my recent changes down to my local development system, and now I can create my new branch. Feature, integrate identity services, create. All right. So where do we start with this? We're going to start in the UI. And I've got a suspicion that I need to come out to program.cs. I probably don't need any of this nonsense. Although, yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, so we're going to have to do a Google, or a Bing rather, because I'm going to use Copilot for this. All right. I have a dotNet application running in an Azure App Service. The App Service currently has the responsibility for authentication of the application. Under this scenario, will my application be... What do I think about Scala programming? Coder noob, I don't know enough about programming in Scala to be able to make a reasonable assessment. I think it's based on Java, isn't it? Have user identity information, and how can I access that? Is it in the request.context.user? Properties? Yeah, I honestly, coder noob, I don't know enough about Scala to give you an opinion. I'm pretty sure that's not the answer you wanted to hear, but it's the most intellectually honest answer I can give you at this point. All right, so I need to use ASP.NET Core, HTTP, user claims helper. I can get the claims principal, yeah. And this does some things. Okay. And I'm using Blazor server.net 8. Is there anything special I need to do in that scenario? Okay, I need to configure authentication in the app service. I've got that. decode the user claims in Blazor server, XMS client principal header. Use a similar approach as in the previous example, but adapted for Blazor server. And I need to register the authentication services. Authentication state provider, context accessor, authentication state provider, yeah. It's all that stuff. Register that. Use authentication in Blazor components. Access the authenticated user. Ensures that your Blazor server application can properly handle user authentication and access user identity, blah, 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 blah. This is going to be a dive, y'all. This is going to be a dive. What can I do to be able to test this capability on when working on my local machine in the IDE? I don't want to have to push to Azure to test changes as I make them. Simulating the authentication. I don't want to mock stuff. Use Docker to simulate easy auth. I don't want to do that. Easy login. Use the Azure CLI credentials. Using local dev tools. Local development and testing. Tell me about using what features in Visual Studio are available to help me with local testing. Oh, stop. What features are available in Visual Studio to help me test the authentication and authorization scheme I've got set up in Azure? There we go. Peanut Clear's built-in authentication and authorization features. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Live unit testing, Azure App Service Emulator. That doesn't help me. Connected services. Should probably add a connected service. I need to mock those authentication headers. Gosh, this is annoying. All right. Add authentication to existing Blazor application. Boom. let's do this. I'm going to need the required packages. I am not going to go with a local user store. I want to use Entra ID for database, create the database context. We're not doing all of that. No. Stop. Add Entra ID authentication to existing Blazor application. All right. And I did create an Azure B2C client earlier this week, or Azure B2C service earlier this week, but I have a suspicion that it's not working right. Okay, client secrets, callback path, all that stuff. Add controllers with views, add Microsoft Identity UI, view. Update your programs, yes. Okay. All right, that's a thing I'm probably going to have to do. I think before then, excuse me, I'm going to need to, I stopped playing World of Warcraft during Shadowlands, and I really want to get back into the War Within, but dude, Anduin, he's not aged well. Of course, he's been through some stuff, but oof, he's looking rough these days. All right. I want to use Azure Entra B2C. B2C stands for business to customer, for management of users of an application I'm building. I have an Azure subscription. Ha! Hey, what's up, Deathbacks? Oh, come on, Rob, learn to type. Subscription already. I created a B2C tenant earlier this week, but it's not available in my app services authorization configuration. Okay, verify tenant creation. B2C tenant was created successfully. Checking the status of your B2C tenant. Okay, I'll do that in a minute. Aha, I need to register my application. Redirect URIs and permissions. Okay, I got to configure some user flows. Okay. And then I should be able to use the authentication settings from my Azure AD B2C. So let's start playing with that. Check my permissions, API permissions in the Azure B2C application reg. Use tenant ID instead of the tenant name, and the configuration can resolve issues. All right. So let's dig into that. I have a feeling that I need to do some stuff to my B2C tenant. So here's this. Oh, by the way, Deathpacks, I wanted to show you this. I demoed this much earlier in the day, but this is the app running in Azure, dude. And unlike yesterday, although my database might have gone for a nap. Oh yeah, database has paused itself again. I need to bring in the poly library to do some automatic retry and exponential backoff and stuff like that, but that's beyond what I want to take on today. We can see that the database is resuming, but yeah, I don't want to show that little yellow line across the bottom. I actually looked at using dotNet Aspire because it basically gives you all of that poly stuff. It's built into the Aspire stack. It gives you really great monitoring and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I haven't seen any literature about using Aspire with anything outside of Azure Container Apps. I've played with Aspire for local development, and personally, I love it. Professionally, I think it has a lot of promise. It comes with a lot of stuff built in that I, as an architect, worry about, but I, as a developer, don't want to think about, if that makes sense. So these are all coming out of my Azure SQL database. I can generate new NPCs. Oh, this looks like an interesting fellow. I can call out to GPT-4o living in Azure OpenAI service, get my stuff, save them. Now it's still all locked down behind my organizational AD tenant, but the basic components are running and talking to each other. So, celebration. I forgot to have a beer over it last night. Maybe I'll have a beer over it tonight. So today I'm going through all the things that I need, or I'm not going to go through all of the things because there's no way I'm getting through them in 2 1-hour streaming sessions. But I'm starting to track down the things I'm going to need to do to turn this into something that I can invite other people to use after they give me money, of course, because Azure ain't free. And I want to at least cover my costs because I'm unemployed and I can't afford to pay for this stuff out of pocket for very long. But I think so far this week I've incurred maybe 10 cents in Azure charges. So what I'm doing right now is I am reviewing my B2C, or I'm about to review my B2C tenant. So let's go into TDD apps, which is the subscription where this thing lives. Yeah, my spending rate so far, I'm almost to a shiny nickel. Let's go to resource groups. We're going to admin. And here's my B2C tenant. So it has been created. I really need to add tags. Billing model is going to be Pago. Exposure is eventually going to be public. Purpose, product hosting, resource role, private services. B2C tenant 4 to be added. Yep, okay, save. excuse me. And I'll use those tags later as things get more and more complex and I want to start building reports and stuff like that. So, checking the status. Where's the status on this thing? It looks like it's right. Activity log, access control. Register your application was registered in the Azure AD B2C directory. I might need to create an app reg. Instead of creating an app reg, can I leverage the managed identity I've assigned to my app service? Okay, I do need to create an application registration. Good to know. So I guess I need to open the tenant. And if I'd had a brain when I was creating the AD, the Active Directory tenant, I would have just called it David because he is my favorite doctor. Oh, that email, that's my public email. That's my personal. But you're right. That's an excellent call out. Thanks, Deathpacks. Sooner than later, I am going to have to create a new email account for me to use for administration on this stuff and assign it admin rights and then demote my Gmail address to perhaps a contributor or maybe even just a non-entity. So subscription status is registered. Built-in policies, Azure AD Graph, API, I don't need any of that stuff. Requesting access tokens, custom domain, blah, 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 blah. Let's register an application. I've done this a few times before. And I want to do a new registration. Display name is, let's just call it GM Tools Application. Supported account types. This organizational directory only. Accounts in any identity provider or educational or organizational directory for authenticating users with user flows. Yeah, okay. We'll return the authentication response to this URI after successfully authenticating the user, provided this now is optional. I'll change that later. Admin consent to OpenID and offline access permissions. Yes. Working on here. Okay, this is what I want. Register. I'm going to pull this off screen just in case it starts showing secrets. Because I don't want to show off my underpants on a Twitch stream. All right, now I had instructions kicking around here somewhere. Here we go. I don't have any redirect URIs yet. API permissions that we need to access, client ID and secret. And I'm going to grab this note, and that's coming over here. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I don't mind showing this stuff off in a Teams call with coworkers. I do not want to show it off on a Twitch stream. That seems like a terrible, terrible, horrible, no good, very bad idea. All right, so GM Tools, application, client ID equals copy. And I'm going to need to add a credential. I need a new client secret. And this will be the appreg key. Oh, you got another meeting? Yeah, those happen, man. And yeah, 6 months is plenty. Secret, I got a secret. And for those of you of a certain age that know that reference, enjoy that earworm. API permissions. I don't think it needs any API permissions. Maintain access to data. Sign users in. Okay. It's from a song called Mr. Roboto that came out in the 80s, the 1980s, by a band named Styx. And it is a vicious, vicious earworm. You got it. It's going to be in your head for hours. But years ago, a friend of mine told me about the secret to killing an earworm, and it's to just sing the theme song to the old animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon in your head, and it will destroy any earworm that gets stuck in your head. And if you sing it out loud, it's going to make people think you're slightly off. Okay, we've created an application registration in my B2C tenant. Okay. Right? It's a very, earworms are a really interesting phenomenon. Enjoy that one too. Okay, so I've done that. Created an app reg. And I should probably set up some user flows. I can bring this over here. Okay, tenant's been created. Register the application. I got it. You can do that with any 4-syllable word where the even numbered syllables have emphasis. Like rhinoceros. Works the same. And it will at first amuse your friends and family, and then they'll get really, really sick of it really, really fast. All right, let's configure user flows. I believe I can pull this over here again. We can see that I have a secret. And that my email address is not visible. Thanks again for that, Mr. Pax. All right, so user flows. Authentication. I probably need to go back out to here. API connectors, company branding. That's a whole nother exercise. Sign up, sign in, profile editing, password reset. Define the user experience and are essential to the authentication process. So there's our registrations. Let's go to overview. Should probably add some identity providers. And that's also going to be a whole thing. And let's go with a local account. Yes. How about Microsoft account? Is it going to let me? Configure your social provider, callback URL, enter an identity provider name. I don't have that information yet for any of these. So before I can go much farther on this stuff, I need to start registering the application with the different IDPs I'll want to use. Now, I'm not going to add details to that because I know what that means, and I'm the only person. Come up with a name and some branding for this application. And find out if I can register the AD tenant as a brand name and use that. No, I can't. I don't believe I can. All right. So these two are prerequisites to moving forward on this. So I'm going to need to come up with Redis might help, but as I understand it, Redis services are prohibitively expensive, especially when you get into enterprise type stuff. And having been an enterprise context developer for 20 years, I tend to think in terms of enterprise applications first, which isn't necessarily a bad place to be. But without enterprise money, I'm a lot more constrained. And actually, I'm hoping to spin my experiences with this, being a broke solo developer, into an asset when I'm working with corporate or enterprise clients, because what I'm doing right now is ingraining a habit where I'm treating the money that is required to host the application and run the application as if it's my own money. And I tend to be pretty stingy when it comes to my own money. And I have a feeling that a lot of enterprise or corporate clients would absolutely love that attitude, as opposed to the techies going, it's not my money, let's just spend it willy-nilly. Well, that's your next Friday's pizza party, buddy, because Lord knows you're not getting a raise or a bonus anytime in the next 10 years. But yeah, treating the client's money as if it's my own is a habit that I've been in for a long, long time, and it's kind of held me back in a lot of things because I've never gone through this exercise before of standing up an Azure system from absolutely nothing to something. And I've been just hyper paranoid all week. And as a matter of fact, for the weeks prior to this, as I've been thinking about and getting ready to do this phase of the process, I've been really hyper focused on, okay, how can I make absolutely certain that this is going to not cost me a whole lot of money? Because the higher the hosting costs, the higher I have to make my subscription fee. And I think for the beginning, I want to target the $10 a month area. If I were only ever planning on doing this NPC generator in here, I'd probably go down to 5 or maybe even 2, because I do intend to put in a quota of how many AI generations you can do, how many NPCs you can store. But I can always drop my price later if I determine that I am overcharging. But raising my price is going to create customer churn, usually negative customer churn. So I don't want that. Ideally, this thing becomes self-sustaining and just pays its own Azure costs. Best case scenario, I generate so much revenue that I don't have to even consider working for another person. And I can keep grinding on it, adding features and making this thing bigger and cooler and so on, satisfying more use cases. But realistically speaking, it's going to take me a long time to get to, say, 10,000 users. Granted, at 10,000 users, that's 100,000 monthly recurring revenue. And that's, yeah, I'm not working for anybody else anymore. That's getting into the place of maybe I should hire a business person or a junior developer or something like that territory. But honestly, I don't think I'd want to take on employees even at 100,000 MRR because to become an employer comes with a whole other set of costs, even beyond that person's payroll. The payroll taxes, employer taxes, so on and so forth. There's an awful lot of expense that comes with bringing on an employee. And if I'm going to get to that point, I want to do it right, and I want to do right by a person that I would employ. I don't want to be one of those guys that's, here, I'll pay you peanuts and you'll make me millions. No. I'm not about that. I just want to make enough to earn a living and pay my own bills and sock some aside so that eventually someday I can stop working for other people. All that aside, I am going to need to at least brainstorm a company name. I think I'm going to roll with just local account for now. Looks like Microsoft hasn't got the memo from Mr. Musk. So I need to come up with a company name. I should probably think about a domain name and attaching a custom domain to this. What's he gonna do about it? It's Microsoft. That's like going up to the biggest, scariest looking mountain of a person at the bar and saying, I don't like the shirt you're wearing. And then he stands up and is like, what are you going to do about it? Oh, look, we have a spammer. Knock, knock. Inclusive gaming communities. Knock, knock. Who's there? Banhammer. I don't deal with spammers. Like, if you want to promote a community, come into the chat and, like, just interact. Don't come in and post links to where I can buy viewers. No. That's cheesy. So, let's see here. I got to come up with a name for this thing I'm doing. I probably need to come up with a domain name so the developer.apps.onmicrosoft.com isn't the domain attached to it. Yeah, names are hard. Naming things and cache invalidation are the two hardest things in software development. I would also say getting past an applicant tracking system and to an interview round is creeping its way up the list. But let's see here. Overview, settings, automation. What kind of settings can I do? I can tie this to a domain at some point. Billing type is MAL. I have, I think, precisely one monthly active user, and of course I know him. He's me. Automation, and so on. All right, Death Packs. I'm actually going to be cutting off in a couple of minutes because I am generating a pretty big offline to-do list. So let's see here. I'm going to need to come up with an associated domain name with this thing. I'm going to need to come up with a application name that I can use when I'm creating registrations with identity providers. And then I can stand up some identity providers. I think I can just get away with using email for now for local accounts. Yeah, I think I'm probably going to end up just starting with email, and I can work towards that stuff. Yeah. And then I got to create some user flows. Public preview of Entra external ID. Yeah. Okay. So I think this afternoon I'm going to create a user flow. And I'm going to start modifying. I think once I've got that, I'll have enough to start modifying my Blazor application with some login and account creation and all of that stuff. So that means I can bring that back up at the top, add, finish configuring the AD. Let's start using the proper Microsoft branding. Entra B2C tenant, use local accounts for IDP. Do that, send this to the top. And I'm just going to leave myself a little notey note. Create the user flows I'll need for the app. Sign up. Sign in. Log out. Edit profile. And reset password. And I'm not going to set up MFA on this. Not yet. I'm not big enough. I don't need it. And it's not like I'm going to be holding people's credit card information because I'm going to farm all of that crap off to Stripe. All right. And convert it to an issue on the GM tools. And assign myself and labels. This will be, I call this infrastructure. This is totally infrastructure. All right. Good deal. So I've got my priorities for this afternoon well identified. And when I come back at 1, we'll hopefully get into a session where we write some code. Until then, take care of yourselves, friends. Don't do like I do and forget to eat lunch every damn day, and then you get hangry in the afternoon, and your brain doesn't work when you're trying to stream, and you just keep bashing your head against the digital brick wall. I'm going to try and break that habit right now and actually eat something of nutritional value instead of just sitting around drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes and playing stupid phone games. I will see you all again at 1 p.m. Take care, folks.